Hello and welcome to the Six Sales podcast. My name is Mike Nicholson from Six Sales. Today I am speaking to James Harris from WPP. James, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah. Not bad for a Thursday on a dreary day in London.
Yeah. All the trains are cancelled. Oh yeah, all the trains are cancelled. Get this, right? So to get here, I had to travel to Morden and get the tube because of slippery lines, and it's about 16 degrees out there and not raining.
It'll explain why the traffic's so bad there.
Yeah, so what on earth is going to be happening when we actually get to proper winter? Anyway, I digress. So just to kick us off, as is traditional, James, could you give us a little bit of a potted history of your career to date, please?
Yeah, I mean, potted might be long, but yeah, I mean, I've been around kind of like 30 years in the industry. I mean, I know I look 21, but I obviously don't. But yeah, I mean, I actually started out in traditional media 30 years ago as a TV buyer, print buyer. I then got very lucky, got in my first startup in about sort of 3 years in, which was Mediacom North Group. And as you do in a startup, you learn lots of things. So that was my kind of first big break. And then I moved to London in 2000 to work for Aegis Media at the time. And then in the course of that, I did my second startup, which is now what you would know as iProspect, but the title we were branded Definity to start with. But that was really, a digital startup to take on the independents, take out the eye levels, which we did. I was quite proud of that. And then, I kind of did another startup for Aegis called Aegis Labs, which was a sort of technical thing. I then went off to work for IPG, did a lot of work with them, I was involved in helping launch Cadrian and things like that in the days of early programmatic. I then ended up at AOL of all places. Yeah. Yes, I used to work at AOL, as my good friend Fern says. You're that old, right? But
it's just been sold again, hasn't it?
Yeah, I saw that actually. It's a bit sad. It's like it's been passed around like an old taxi cab. But I mean, I think that was interesting, and that actually gave me a really good insight to the media owner side and the vendor side. And then after that, I kind of, I went back to actually become Dentsu by then. So I was Chief Digital Officer, then Chief Data Officer for Cara, and then we launched Dentsu X on the back of winning Jaguar Land Rover, and as a result of that, I think that's why I got hired by WPP. I went to Mindshare, probably to stop me stealing their accounts. Spent about 3 years as the CSO of Mindshare, and then ended up moving into the centre. And in the course of all that, I sort of moved between media to brand to all the stuff we do in the group. So now I work across all the areas. I've spent the last few years learning lots of great stuff from people like Landor. I'm an expert on fonts and packaging now, of all things. But for me, it's been great because it means I can kind of mix my experience set really. So and it's not a potted history, but that's a long-winded version.
You fit a lot in. I had a little mental count up as we were going along. I think Omnicom's the only agency group you haven't worked for yet.
I haven't, but I did do a little bit of work on the side for them once. Right?
Okay.
I took a bit of time off. So
Fortix.
My good friend Dan Clay's brought me in for a few weeks to look at something. So technically I did, but I don't want to put that on my CV because I don't like them. I just don't. It's not a real job.
Yeah, cool. I'm always really interested to hear about people going from the buy side to the sell side or the other way around. And you said that you went from agency to AOL. What was that like? Did you learn anything? Was there any things that opened your eyes that you wouldn't have necessarily seen when you were in an agency?
I mean, on paper, it wasn't actually a plan, right? I'd actually gone to take some time off, and I think it was Jackie Kelly, who's my boss at the time, or had been one of my bosses at IPG, said, would you talk to Tim Armstrong? He's basically, they're rebooting AOL. They basically want to, get into the agencies, and they're looking for people to do it. And I met a wonderful guy, who's a good friend now, Jag Bamberg, you probably know him, he's pretty famous in the industry. And he had this brilliant plan that he was enacting of bringing in really a sort of senior agency people to that side. And I was the kind of international guy. So, outside the US, I was like, team of one, but in a good way. So it was great, but I learned a lot. I mean, again, I thought I knew the sort of sell side from the buy side, and I didn't. And in the first couple of weeks, I was like, "Oh my God, what the hell is going on?" But then I was very lucky with people like Jack, and also I had David Bell as a mentor, which was amazing. I quickly learned, and actually, I think my experience was super valuable for them.
Yeah.
So, they were not until that point able to get in to see agency CEOs and stuff. And it was a combination of contacts, but also just the way they would approach it, right? Because I knew what those guys wanted. I knew those guys. I could get us in, but then I wouldn't present at them. I'd go, What do you think? How can I help you? I mean, that was David Bell's great advice, and I always use is just ask people what they think and how you can help, right? Don't need to present at them all, which is why I still have a dislike of people coming to me and selling me with PowerPoint. I would sort of go, tell me a story, speak to me. So
I'm going to road test an idea that I've got actually with that in mind. It is PowerPoint, I suppose, technically, but it's much smaller. So the working title for this idea I've got is 6 pitch, because 6 cells. Yeah. And the idea is that it's 6 slides that have to be delivered in under 6 minutes. That answer the questions: who you are, what you do, how you do it, who you do it with, why I should care, and what's the context for this. The thought process behind this is it normally takes at least half an hour of somebody's time for a vendor to come in and pitch to you, and if you were to open your doors to everyone that wanted to pitch you never get anything done. So if we can condense the essence of a product or service into 6 minutes or less, then you can reach more people more often. What do you think? Be kind. We're on air.
No, I think it's a good idea. I mean, for me, it's more about the story, to be honest, Mike. Right? Yeah. If the story's great, I'll listen to it for an hour. The problem is most pitches I see, and I dare say, but especially in the world of ad tech pitches, they're just excruciating, right? They're almost kind of talking to themselves. They're not going, "What's your problem? What's the simple story, right? What's the thing that you're going to get out the back of it?" I mean, part of my job in WPP is training people on storytelling, right? And I wrote a book on it 3-4 years ago.
That's right. What's it called?
It's called Bond to Bowie, if you want to buy it.
Bond to Bowie.
Bond to Bowie, right? But it's a very simple thing, which is, storytelling is actually 3 things, right? It's science, because we actually react to good stories, right? So if you think about any great film you love, you have a physical reaction. So you can actually manipulate people in a nice way, in the same with any conversation, with even an advert, right? And so I train people on that. The second bit is that every story has the same structure, right? So there's a secret sauce running through stories. And again, we don't realize that until people remind us, but especially in the world we live in, the more complex something is, the better that works, right? Because it actually goes back to the once upon a time thing, right? Yeah. But that is brilliant for 2 reasons. One, it means you've got a from and a to and a very set of clear actions. And secondly, it's built in a format of 3, right? We're all conditioned to 3. Our world is built of stories and 3. So actually, if you take something like ad tech and you put it in that format, people go, "Oh my God, I feel warm and fuzzy and like it." The problem is we kind of we start out as kids learning these skills, but then we get told PowerPoint, bullet points, complexity. So it's really interesting. I actually trained 500 people yesterday on a virtual workshop from the agencies with it. And it was lovely to see the feedback I got, lots of going, "Wow, never thought of that," simple little things. So I think, going back to your idea, I love it. Yeah. I'd say, but it's the story, right? Whether it's 6 slides or 60, it's the 6 minutes for me is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
If you can tell that story in 6 minutes, it might be no slides, it might be 6, doesn't matter. I would say that's the killer app.
Cool. Well, you said we think in 3. What were the 3?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, again, you read like Steve Jobs' book, or Johnny Ives, who I'm a huge fan of. They think in 3s, right? Because the world is actually hidden in 3s. So when you're a kid, it's like 3 little pigs, 3 steps on a podium. But then if you start getting into slightly more cerebral analysis of culture, religion, right, all of it is all built in 3s. So in the same way that everything goes back to this simple story structure, the way we communicate, it's very much the same with 3s. So when you put the 2 together, you suddenly have 2 really powerful things, right? And again, the storytelling, it's all chemical reaction, right? You basically live on dopamine, oxytocin, or endorphins. And when you do a story in a good way, you give people all 3. So suddenly you manipulate people in a good way, right? So, I mean, that was part of why I did it at AOL, was just, help people tell those stories, help people, teach people how to do it, and, pitching to agencies, and, going from a £3,000 IO to a £3 million one, because we were telling great stories, and people went, "Oh my God, that's a great thing." I mean, the whole culture and code thing at the time, it ended up with Verizon buying AOL for, I think, 4.4 billion. So, because it was a clear story.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the best bosses I ever had, actually, Nick Hugh, he was at the Telegraph at the time, then he went to the Guardian. I think he's at Pinterest still now. But when he came in, I went into Visium, as it was then.
Oh, yeah.
And he did one of these breakfasts where you come in, you get the whole agency. And he told this story about the Telegraph. And I'd been working there for a year and a half, I think, by that point. I was like hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. Like there was hardly any numbers or stats or media and this and that and the other. It was about the audience and what it means to people and how it fits into their lives. It's like, wow, this is brilliant. So shout out to Nick for that. So we were going to talking to humans and storytelling and how innate it is, like sort of within us. It's how we, as Rory Sutherland said, it's a bit like the PDF of information. It's how we store information. It's how we send information. Quite like that analogy to AI. So we were going to talk today about human intelligence and artificial intelligence and how the two things should work together. So just as a starter for 10, if you like, can AI think, feel, or act like a human?
Oh, that's a very deep question. I think we can. I think we can teach it to mimic humans. This might be a better phrase, right? I think certainly the work I've been doing lately, we can make it write and sound like a person, right? Which is actually I think is a big step forward, because one of the issues with a lot of, especially things like ChatGPT and that, is that they kind of sound like that first year management consultant, right? Sort of, they don't actually say yes or no. They just kind of bullshit you to the point where you get frustrated. So for me, I've been kind of obsessed with going, can I teach these things to write or, you know, increasingly now even speak with voice agents in the style of other people? And, you know, the answer I found is yes, you can. It takes a lot of work, a lot of control. It's not just a question of saying, hey, speak like this guy. But once you do, then you actually start to bring a really interesting layer. So I think the interesting thing then is that gets you back to that wider thought, which is it takes a human to teach it, which for me means that actually the AI is the bit in the middle, right? I often describe it, we need human intelligence at the front, and the human intelligence is what's the problem and why are we trying to solve it? It's that, you know, it's that irrational human, right? It's like, why do I need to solve this? How would I solve it? If you can answer that and work that out and then put the AI in the middle, the other bit is what's the kind of impact you want, right? So is this for people, for example, in an agency to use? So, you know, why are they going to go, this is great, versus, oh my God, it's another piece of technology? Or if it's an end consumer, right? I remember when I was at Aegis, we had a great saying in iProspect and in development side, which was, there's nothing as ingenious as an idiot. And it's a great maxim, right? So when you think about consumers, I'm not suggesting they're all idiots, but they act in such an irrational way. If you don't design that human thing in, people will break your stuff very quickly. So for me, it's kind of start with human intelligence, bring the artificial intelligence in, and then think about the kind of output, right? How do you anticipate that? And also, how do you train people to use this stuff? I mean, again, when I'm doing the storytelling training, I show people how you can use AI to supercharge it. And I guarantee every single person goes, oh my God, that's really helpful. Not, oh my God, I've got to use a computer for it, because you can be much more creative with it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find so exciting about the AI, and I use predominantly Perplexity or ChatGPT, is you just keep coming up with different use cases on how it can be helpful. Yeah. And then you think about it, and you go and try and train it, and it comes back and it can do it. And you think, this is insane. But I think I feel like a lot of people feel like AI is kind of a silver bullet. You can just quickly say, do that. I think you were saying off air, was it Beetlejuice? You said something of the threes, and then suddenly it'll do what you want. It's not quite that easy, is it? Yeah,
I mean, look, I think what's interesting, if you go back in history, right? I go back on my career and say, you know, the early days of digital was exactly the same, right? It was the same with the internet. It was then the same with programmatic, right? People go, if I just do this thing, it'll be fine. And, you know, the answer we know from history tells us was that's not the answer, right? It's exactly that. What's this actually solving in the real world, right? What's the problem? What's the human connection? And I don't think AI is any different, right? It's a great thing because it actually humanizes the interfaces a lot better. I think you get more flexibility, so that, you know, you can interface with technology even if you're not a kind of geek. I mean, I'm a horrific geek, but I think that's the thing. But yeah, everybody kind of goes, oh, if I just say the word, it's the Beetlejuice thing, right? say it 3 times and it'll appear. And I think that's the problem. There's lots of stories at the moment saying, 95% of agents don't work, and it's probably true. I come across a lot, which, it's like, what the hell have you built and why? And again, I think also people think these things are simple, which they're not. So, I've created an agent recently, and the parameters I used were about 65 pages. Really carefully written. It took me weeks. It's not just a question of going to ChatGPT and saying, can you do this? And that's the problem. I think the media also set it up as that thing. I mean, the thing that made me laugh was the Deloitte and Touche, getting paid for that report. They was a kind of a junior, right? But what's happening is juniors are doing that, unfortunately, in companies, and they're pushing it up the line. So I think they call it slop officially, but slop gets sent up, it gets sent back. And, that's again, it's the same as digital and programmatic, right?
Yeah. Is this why the human is so important in this whole thing? Is I always tell the story of when ChatGPT first came out. I showed it to my mate who works in care homes. He'd never heard of it, and I showed him just over a pint after we played football. And I asked it to review QPR season. He was a QPR fan, and I mean, it was all wrong, but it was so believable. I didn't know it was wrong because I wasn't looking at that particular league. And he was like, "Well, I wish we were 8th. We're actually 15th or something." But it was so believable, and just like bang, 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 like that. If you're not experienced or knowledgeable in what you're asking AI to do, it's so believable what it gives back. You can end up putting stuff out that's actually horrifically incorrect, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is when I'm increasingly training and talking to people about this, right, I actually make a big distinction between what I would call the LLMs, right, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, etc., and what people refer to as the agentic or the agents, right? I mean, I sort of hate these, excuse my language, but these slightly wank words that people use, right? But the agentic thing, if you use the word agents, they're very different because they're very specialist. They're focused on doing one job well, and also the knowledge you give them is very carefully curated and restricted, right? So in the big models, they're kind of like they're good, they're like the new search engine, right? But just as you would have with search, you can find a load of bilge, right? I mean, that's the problem. So I think, the really good stuff is in the building the agent solutions. But, for me, there's 3, it's simple, but 3 really important things, right? First thing is, what's the information I need to get? That's not always an easy job. You don't always have it. So what's the information I want? Where do I find it? What's the instructions I now need to attach to that information, right, when building an agent to make it work and not, hallucinate or, to your point, give me rubbish? And then, critically, what's the impact I want, right? What do I want this to do? Why is it a good idea? Why is the person going to use it that I'm giving it to? And if it's consumer facing, why is the consumer going to go, oh, that's cool? And again, it's simple, right? But almost all the time, I don't see people answering any of those questions. They certainly don't answer the first one, right? Think about the information. They just go, oh, it'll find it, and it won't. So again, that I think the agent world is really interesting because it's moving quickly. There's also the issue I have with the word is people go agent. Agents are very different, right? You can have an agent that just does automation. So I actually do a lot of being a horrible geek, I spend a lot of my time messing with this stuff, and I build lots of stuff in things like NAN, right? But that's automation, really. It's about moving information around using APIs. You can have thinking agents, right, where you actually ask them to do thinking, to be more creative, and then you kind of get the sort of hybrid, right, where they'll cross over the 2, so they can be creative, and then you can fire them into an automation. So,
can these agents think though in the way that we think about thinking?
I think I would say they only think with what we give them, if that makes sense. I mean, again, it's the old Skynet thing, isn't it? I think if they become self-aware fully, then hopefully, because I always say please and thank you to them, and I know it costs money, I might be on the good list, but I think there is a point where, they can start to think a little bit, but I don't think for me, it's about irrationality, if I can spin it, right? So I asked this question of one of our partners recently, is how irrational can your agents be, or can your solutions be? And they were kind of like, not really. Which I thought was great, because I'm like, well, that's the human thing, right? Humans are irrational. We don't behave in a rational way. We're lazy. We're stupid. We're rude. We go, I don't like you. Yep. But that is the humanity. So I think as much as you train an agent on that, you'll get solutions that start to mimic it. But I still think you need that human thing. I mean, I think we touched on it earlier, but the knowledge and experience is also really interesting, right? So, I know I look 21, right? But I'm over 50, right? And I run in at times to this kind of ageism where people go, "Oh my God, you're old. You couldn't possibly understand this new technology." And my view is the opposite. I actually have 30 years of experience, which is a massively critical fuel for this, right? I think if you have that and then you can connect it to the instructions and stuff, it's a huge currency. And I think as an industry, we've got to really reverse the curve, because there's very few people of my age in roles like I'm in. So yeah, but again, it's about teaching the solutions to be human for me, and we still need humans to do it.
And touch on the experience thing again. I'm also over 50. And I would also argue that exactly as you did.
So I was supposed to say you don't look over 50.
Yeah, thank you.
I was going to. I was just slow.
Take that fiver back. It didn't work. Where was I with that, James? Yeah. So if you've seen something done manually over a 30-year period, you've seen all of the times it's done well and not so well, and the problems you can get and the questions you get. All of that stuff goes into a prompt, right? Into how you train an agent. And if you don't have that information to train it with, you won't get that'll probably be present itself as a bug, but actually what it is, you just haven't trained it to do what it needs to do.
And it's also what you don't want it to do, right? So when I write these things, I probably put as much content around what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to say this. Don't do that. Don't do this, right? Like you would train somebody in the old days, right? If you're buying media.
They know nothing.
Yeah, don't do dumb stuff, right? But you need to tell it that. And that's, again, people are going, "Oh, I'm not even going to think about this." So again, it's a really interesting thing. It's, tell it what you want it to do, but also tell it what you don't want it to do, right? I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to hallucinate. I don't want you to lie to people. If you don't know the answer, just say, "I can't answer that, sorry."
Cool. So what are some of the best use cases you've seen in terms of Pete Markey, what did Pete Markey call it? AI-assisted humans, the previous guest. Pete Markey is CMO at Cancer Research UK, and I think he got that from an agency. They describe themselves as AI-assisted humans, which is quite a nice saying. What are the best use cases you've seen of that so far in sort of media and advertising?
I entirely agree with that, by the way. I mean, the phrase I use is intelligent assistance, right? I always reverse the word. I'm like, forget AI, it's IA, right? Intelligent assistance is the thing. Because, if you come at it from that angle, then what you start doing is you start adding layers to make tasks better, right? So you go, okay, we're doing something here that might take 2 weeks, right? Why is it taking us 2 weeks? Is it labor intensive? Is it something we could speed up? And that's where I would start and go, okay, let's look at the problem, right? How would I solve it as a human? It's going to take me 2 weeks, right? Now, if I bring AI in to do this, can I speed that up? I mean, I've just worked on something, big project internally where, we write lots of responses for information, right? Very manual process, but it has to be high quality. You don't put a bad one out because you don't get called back. But actually, we realised, we can create technology that will do this, right? We can make it consistent, actually improve the quality, but we can put massive speed and scale into it. So again, but the only way you get there is by training it. So that would be an example use case. Another one, obviously, I'm quite open about being neurodiverse, right, these days in the industry. I'm working with a couple of people on an interesting project at the moment where we're creating voice agents that people will be able to talk to and just ask questions about it. Because again, it's a human problem, right? People, especially people who are diagnosed or they have someone close to them diagnosed, go, "Oh my God, okay, tell me more. What do I do?" There's lots of people available. I mean, I try and make myself able to talk to people, but it's just very difficult, right? Human's still the best thing to talk to, but we realised that actually we could do something quite cool, a non-profit thing where we might be able to create agents you could just have a little chat with. So again, that for me is a really good example where we're going to do that. It's actually going to help people in an easy way. We're going to use voice so it feels more human. And interestingly, where we might trigger that from is even from putting little NFC stickers on paper, right? That kind of thing. So again, it's very much starting with the human problem and the human interface, and then going, okay, how do we layer this stuff on top? So yeah, to your previous guest, I love that thought, and in my head, I always say, yeah, intelligent assistance is the word.
I like that. Switch the letters around. I was asked a question about a custom GPT that I made, and it just came back to me as you were talking there. So perhaps you could answer the question on my behalf. So basically, I built a custom GPT where I spoke for hours about everything I've learned about using LinkedIn as a business tool, and then transcribed it and then put it as a PDF into a custom GPT and blah, blah, blah. And I shared it with a few people in the industry. And somebody asked me, why would I ask that custom GPT that question in particular, rather than just ask normal chat GPT or the internet? And I was thinking about your neurodiverse group, where you're going to have like actual voices, and it's the information. I think it's going back to the information that you put into it. Again,
exactly. Right? It goes back to my earlier point that you have to sort of see the world in what I call the large language models, and then what you might call the small language models, right? Which is the agent world, where a lot of the time the agents are operating on very small knowledge sets. So the interesting thing is, and again, I think there's an interesting shift, right? I would say for 25 years, we've been in what I call a digital economy. When I was at Dentsu, that was our thing. We talked about the digital economy, right? I think we're now in a cognitive economy. And there's some big shifts with that, right? Including the way we need to operate, the way that...
What does that mean? What do you mean by...
Well, I think, we set ourselves up in the digital economy to things like scale, right? Lots of hands on keyboards, right? SQL databases, right? They don't go away. We still need them, right? But in a cognitive economy, speed trumps scale a lot of the time, right? You ideally, in specialist agents, you don't really need that massive database, right? Because actually it's a problem. If you're trying to look at 50 novels at the same time as a model, you're going, oh, hang on just a minute, right? If you can recognize that a vector database is fundamentally different, and it's about giving them one novel, it can be a long novel, it will work much better. So there's some very different design principles. So to answer your question, Mike, yeah, it's doing a different job, right? But you've got to understand that before you go at it, because what's happened is a lot of people have just transposed from that digital world into what I call the cognitive world, right? And they've gone, oh, right, you're a techie, you're a developer, you're a coder, you can sort this stuff out. And I think that's the problem. It goes back to the experience thing. What they've not gone is, who are the people who know the human answers? We need more of these guys. I think that's what we're missing.
And also, there's a lot of crap written about, in that particular instance, but there's a lot of crap written about LinkedIn by people that just want to create content for the sake of it, and an LLM will find that, and if it finds that, and they all copy each other, all of these people. So if it's out there a number of times, it'll just find that and give you that, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, probably I should say this, but I will. I post a lot on LinkedIn, right? And a lot of the stuff I write by hand. But I actually do post quite a lot, which is just generated from a trigger word. So, I have an agent I built. It will write me a full post on neurodiversity, AI, whatever, from literally just WhatsApping that word. It creates the image, creates the hashtags, the article, everything for me. And I think a lot of people I know have not realised that those are generated by AI. But again, it's because I've trained my little agent to not sound like a large language model. And also what I do is I go to RSS feeds. I don't go to a large language model to start with, right? I go some specific content here. I want you to analyze it. And I'm also very clear that here's the original article, right? So it's not about remixing it and stealing from publishers, that kind of thing. But again, it's a different mindset from, I'd say even 10 years ago, it was a data job. I mean, I said to a big client of ours recently, I said, do you have a chief data officer, data science officer? And they're like, yeah, I've got loads of those. I said, do you have a content science officer? Like, what's that? I was going, well, that's what you need, right? But you think about it, that's the interesting thing now, is that's another one of the shifts, right? It's no longer about the data, it's about the content. And again, it links into the world of curation. I think, the last time we met, I was doing I was a guest on the, I think, Multilocal's podcast, right?
Curation conversations.
Yeah, for me, that's the core, right? It's similar thing. It's the content becomes more important because again, it's an old school thing, but context is really important, and context and content are becoming more and more important in this world of AI.
So just touch upon that since you brought it up, because obviously content's something quite dear to my heart, but a number of brands, publishers, etc., are seeing massive drop-offs in traffic because the old way of search working, where Google ranks, crawls your site and then sends a link, and then someone finds the link and then they come to your site, and now it answers it within the within Google itself or Perplexity or wherever it might be. So there's it seems that content discovery is going through probably its biggest transformation since the internet began, because it feels like search has just been turned upside down and we have to start again. So not only is Gen AI changing how content's created, search AI is actually changing how it's found as well. So what do you think for, like, if clients were asking you, how should we be thinking about this? Like, what would be your answer be? Because it feels to me like it's a bit of a head scratcher. I've thought about it a lot and I still haven't come up with a plausible way forward.
I guess if I knew the absolute answer, I'd be a very rich man, wouldn't I? I'd probably be, I don't know where I'd be, but
not here.
Probably here, because I enjoy this one. But yeah, I'd probably be sat on a yacht somewhere, right? I mean, actually, I was in my early career, I actually said, I'm not sure how big Google's going to be, right? So that's how good I am at this sort of futurology stuff. But no, I think, well, and I have been asked that question by clients recently, and actually I won't name them, but I'm working with our big clients to do a whole series on this stuff, right? Which is, my first thing is, like, don't panic, right? There's a now, next and future in all this stuff, right? Often we over-anticipate the impact in the short term, to quote some very famous person, I forget, but we fail to see the long term. And I think if we look at the whole history of the last 25 years, it's the same thing. So I think, yes, it is disruptive. And yes, it was like when the internet appeared, right? And I remember being a print buyer. I remember it was Telegraph came in to see me and said, this internet thing. And, and I remember, working with clients like Teletext Holidays at the time, who said, oh, this won't be that much. It won't affect our business. People still want to use teletext, right? So you can't do nothing. But the interesting thing is, I think sometimes people freak out too much. I mean, I think, yes, it is causing a short-term problem. But to your point, really good human content is still there, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. I love a bit of Formula One, right? Somebody recently had an idea to go, oh yeah, we can actually have a series where AI races, right? It's shit. I'm not watching that. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that, right? Why do I want to watch machines racing cars? Yeah. I want to watch what I watch on F1, right? Which is
Human
a bit
that machine.
Yeah, like, I want to see Lance Stroll storming into the back of people, knocking them off, that kind of thing. I mean, God, we should have brought Latifi back at some point. But my point being, the human factor in all this, right? That content is much better. And it's the same, I think, with human content. I mean, people watching this probably will disagree, right? But you and I having a conversation is better than our two agents having a conversation.
100%.
I could make that happen, right? I could mimic you, mimic me, but it's not going to be as much fun, right?
No, absolutely. So from a more broad AI perspective, can you give us one example of how AI has been really helpful to you in your role at WPP, and maybe one way that it's been less helpful? Yeah.
Oh God, that's another deep question. I mean, I think, look, it's helpful in a lot of different ways, and I think, as I say, it goes back to this whole, when you step beyond just going, okay, we've got a large language model, right? And we go, okay, let's build specific solutions to specific problems that are repeatable. It gets super helpful, right? So as I say, if you've got to write a response to for information, and you've got to do 50 of those, and you can get a machine to help you do it in 2 days, not 2 weeks, that's a really good example of where you go. If you can use it to, be more creative with your storytelling, it's a really good example. I mean, when I was training people yesterday, I get them to write by hand, but then I show them and go, actually, AI can help you, right? So I've got a little voice agent you can talk to and say, hey, what do you want a story about? And you say, office full of dinosaurs. And it goes, yeah, great idea. And then it tells you a little story, right? So it helps you be creative. So those are all examples of where we're layering it in. And I think that's for me, the future use cases. I guess where it's not helpful is the disruption it brings, right? At the speed of disruption. And I think, the biggest challenge our industry, not us, but our industry, we're part of it, is facing is this shift to a cognitive economy. And I think, the currency for me that's now important is what I call thinking power, not manpower. Sorry, people power. I shouldn't just use that old phrase. I'll get someone will tell me off. I know who will tell me off for that. But that's the problem, right? We built an industry based on people power, right? And as I say, even in digital, it was hands on keyboards, programmatic was all that. We no longer really need to deploy that. What we need is fewer, but much better paid, much smarter, more experienced people. So that's one of the problems. And in there is problems like ageism, right? Because as an industry, it's well known that advertising and marketing is quite ageist, but it's a problem we've got to solve because the people with the experience are people who can now solve the problems or train the machines. So again, I think you get all these problems roll up very quickly, and the whole speed thing is that's it, because from this week to next, the technology will change. I mean, really good voice agents weren't really a thing 3 months ago. Now they're a really good thing. So you've got to go, okay, how do I bring that in? How do I bring my thinking to bear on that?
You said something earlier, like a model of thinking, like now, next, and future. What would you say to somebody that was maybe feeling that they might be being left behind because they're not learning AI at the rate that they perceive they should be? Like, what would you sort of say to anyone in our industry about learning AI, whether they should do even, how much time they should do, what should they do first? What would you recommend?
It's actually really easy to a certain point, right? And what I mean by that is, of course, with anything, there's a point where you can become a deep expert, right? You can write code. I mean, this morning I was messing around with webhooks trying to get something to work complex, right? Which that's the code side. But 90% of the time you can build a fairly effective agent in GPT or Gemini, right? And that's why I say to people is don't be frightened of it, because the problem is people go, it's AI, it's technology, I need the techies. It's like, I remember back a few years back when I was working at Dentsu, right? We had a problem where everyone went, oh, it's digital, we need the digital guys, or programmatic, it's complicated. And I remember creating a whole series, I think at the time I called it Digital Kung Fu, right? Which is, no, this stuff, you can all learn it. And it was, if you understand it and you understand the basics, then you're going to be much better to get your experts to build it. And I think it's the same with AI. I mean, I trained one of our agency's leadership teams a couple of weeks ago. Great bunch of people, but initially I got a sensation of going, oh my God, it's tech, it's a bit. I just spent 3 hours with them going, this is why it's quite cool, this is what it can do for you. And then I spent the last 2 hours going, right, have a go. And all I did is I sat them down, I showed them how to build a SWOT analysis agent from scratch, literally going, right, what's the information you need? Right, we can get that off the internet, right? What are you going to tell it to do? And then what do you want from it? And, oh, that'd be really cool if it was in a PDF. Okay, I'll show you how to do that. And it was really interesting afterwards. A great bunch of all came, oh yeah, I've got all these ideas, and all these ideas start flowing. Now, they're not necessarily going to build them because they're the leadership, right? But suddenly their mindset's much different. It's like, oh yeah, we should be using AI as a change agent. And I think it's the same as digital, right? I mean, people resisted that for years. I mean, we used to be the guys in the meeting, didn't we? You got the last 2 minutes going. Well,
you mentioned the Telegraph coming in to see you and saying that internet thing. They were the first newspaper to go digital. And there was a lot of ructions inside Telegraph Towers, like journalists going, what are you doing giving our journalism away for free? That's the only reason that we're here.
Yeah, I remember it well. I remember I actually did one of the first ever internet campaigns, which actually hurt because it was for Manchester United of all people, right? And I'm a big City fan from birth, and so it really hurt me to do that. But again, people going like, why are you advertising on the internet, right? Now it would be the opposite question. So I think, it's this kind of long term, we'll under anticipate the impact of it. In the short term, I think we're all freaking out a little bit too much. I mean, it's the same with the whole blockchain thing a few years back, right? Everybody was like, oh my God, it's no longer a thing. It is a thing. It's the other side of AI, right? The blockchain side of this is as big and important as the tech side. Just people have gone, because there's no longer pictures of monkeys floating around for 60 million quid, they've gone, oh, that's bubbles burst. I mean, everything has a bubble, right? Yes, there is an AI bubble, but, to quote Rob Webster, who writes about this a lot, and I agree with him, is, there's little bubbles in this, but it's not one of those. I don't think this is a classic bubble because it actually changes the way we work. It changes our ability to do things. So why would we walk away from that?
One of the things I find so useful is sometimes I've got lots of different thoughts going through my mind at the same time. And if I was to sit down and write them, it would take ages to try and organize my thoughts, organize my thinking, and then write it down. But you can just press the voice thing and just talk at it. So like, I'm just going to talk at you for ages. I'm going to get everything out, and then I want you to put that into some sort of structure, and then it gives you a place to start, right? Like a physical world place to start.
Exactly,
and that's kind of democratizes technology, because before people would have had to know how to code and in order to build these agents and stuff like that. And a lot of people didn't know how to do that in our industry, because that's not their job. But now you can, with your own voice, more or less, get something pretty decent.
It's funny, Mike, because earlier today, I was running this workshop yesterday, and I said to the guys, I'll send you my voice storyteller, right, that you can talk to. And I sent it round to them all. And I actually got a note back from one of the ladies on the call. And she said, oh my God, she goes, my young son's neurodiverse. She said, would it be okay if I use this? This will transform his life, right? Being able to articulate a story, to listen to stories verbally versus, struggling with writing. And do you know what? I was almost sitting at my desk crying a little bit this morning. I was going, I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that she'd gone, can we use it for this? And so to your point, those are the use cases, right? And when I find that kind of use case, I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely why we can change people's lives with it. So, I'm suddenly already, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I never thought. But for kids that are struggling, right? Kids that, my daughter's got dyslexia. She struggles with reading and writing. I mean, I struggled because of my ADHD, or my now AU ADHD, where I've been added to the list. But that's one of the reasons I did it, right? But I didn't do it overtly, but now I've realized that use case. I'm like, wow, what a powerful thing. So that kind of thing, it's the human interface, right? That is getting really, really powerful that you can do that.
Well, I'm really sorry to bring it back from a really beautiful, worthy use case back to media and advertising again.
That's all right.
It feels like
in advertising. We should.
I know, but I feel like after that we should have finished with that rather than now go back to anyway AI and media and advertising after you've just transformed somebody's life. Do you see a future? Like you talk about this now, next, and a future. Probably not now, but do you see a time in the future where AI and machine learning will basically run all media planning and buying, and it'll just be machines talking to machines? No. And you don't? Okay.
No, I'll tell you why I believe that, right? I believe that, well, let me put it this way. I believe that maybe 70% of it will be automated, right? So if we're buying programmatic, as we call it now, we can make that a lot better, right? We can be smarter. We can pull these agentic solutions, and you only have to look at LinkedIn or Bad Week to go, yeah, lots of people doing that. It goes back to the creativity, the irrationality of humans, right? I genuinely believe that some of the best, and this is the same for creative as well, the best work, the best solutions are when a human goes, what's possible, right? And the way I've always described it for years is, in media especially, media can be anything and everything, right? It can be anything and everything you can imagine, but you sort of still need to be a human to imagine it. And two things for me prove that, right? If you go into one of the engines, right, and you say, give me an idea for this, and you then have a bunch of human ideas for the same thing, every single time I've been in that situation, you go, the human ideas are better. There'll be a brilliant idea hiding in there. You go, machine will never do that. And then secondly, you can use the machine to articulate that better. But again, the irrationality of thought that goes with that, with creative, machines are not great at that. I mean, even AI-generated ads that are brilliant because a human sat there and gone, I mean, the Wicked Death one you've seen, right?
No, I haven't, no.
So it was a fantastic ad where the guy, the sheriff stops a guy in his car. It quickly becomes obvious it's his dad, right? But he's like, why have you stopped me? He goes, it's because I'm drinking this. He goes, no, it's fine. He goes, is it the body in the trunk? No, is it all this stuff, right, which would get you locked up forever. And then I can't remember what the punchline is, right?
Didn't tidy your room or something.
Yeah, something like that. But it's brilliant, right? Because, but yes, it's generated with AI, but they're missing the point. It isn't. The idea was generated by a human. So for me, the creativity is, we might use machines to build more of this.
So were they characters, or were they pretending to be human? Was it AI created humans?
They were like characters, right?
Right, but like cartoon characters or animations?
No, they were real humans.
Right.
So been generated, I think, in VO3 or something. So humans, right? AI generated, but the whole story was very human led. And it's the same when you go and you look at some of these videos at the moment on TikTok, right? I mean, I spend too much time doom scrolling. People tell me not to, but sometimes I find these hilarious, like welcome to Waitrose. If you're not wealthy enough, you're not coming in, right? It's generated with AI, right? But that is a human joke, right? It's like, not enough money, you're not coming in here, or it's like welcome to Weatherspoons.
So like a paddy power, right?
Yeah, it is exactly that, right? So the point is the mechanism to make it happen is easier, and actually I think that's a good thing at times because it's democratizing the ability for everyone to be creative, right? But the creative human thought is still what makes it brilliant. These kids making millions of pounds out of Bigfoot videos. Good on them because they're the creative thought, right? It's a human thought. It's a smart kid who's gone, do that, I'll make some money. So I think for me, going back to media, we are still going to have a world where brilliant creative media planning, which I've always been obsessed with, will be the differentiator. And actually, I think that becomes even more valuable, right? So clients will go, yeah, okay, 70% automate it, show me how brilliant, but I still want brilliant ideas and creativity in media because that's what will stand out to consumers, especially when you've got so much slop flowing about. That's the thing that will differentiate.
Are you talking there though about the creative rather than the media?
No, I'm actually talking about media, right? Okay. So this is where sometimes people get confused with when I say it, but that's why I say media is anything and everything, right? So media and creative are not necessarily things you always separate, right? It might be where you stick your ad, right? Or you might go, oh, that wall there, I could do something really cool on that, right? For me, that's a media idea as much as a creative idea. And I think that's the problem. Sometimes we separate them and go, oh, it's creative, it's media. It's like, we'll put them together. And it's that kind of thinking.
But they used to be together, obviously. You'll remember that. Bit
and I think AI will push us back towards it for that 30%. And I'm actually really excited by that prospect. I love a bit of creative media planning, and probably because people often describe me as being slightly mad, but I love that mad ideas. But that will be the difference. And to your earlier question, Mike, that's where the publishers will thrive and survive, the good ones.
In the 30% of brilliant ideas, rather than
they will be able to go along to a client, an agency, whatever, and say, we can help you do that, and that'll be the standout. And that is really, really high value stuff, right? I mean, when I was at AOL, we had a thing called originals, and that was an example of it, right? Really high-end stuff that you would create bespoke, you would build it for clients, and they loved it, and it worked. And that's where it's even like Netflix, right? I mean, you're still going to watch great series and films, right? A lot of that is still human-made. Yes, they're using virtual studios and things, but it's still a high value content. So I think if we take that view of the world, and I know sometimes it's unpopular, right? That's the world I think we'll move to. I don't think we'll move to everything is machines working machines. But it goes back to the earlier problem, which is, we've come from a world of people power to a world of thinking power. So what we've got to do is go, how do we monetize that? And also, frankly, how do we get better at standing our ground and going, that's the value?
Well, talking of monetization, so in a world where, let's say, 70% of media was traded completely by the machines, so one buys it, the other one sells it, how do publishers and media owners affect what happens there? Or do they just have to accept whatever happens?
I guess it's, I mean, look, if you can distinguish yourself and make really good margin on the 30%, then, I think to some degree it's like, you've got commoditization. But the reality is we've already commoditized it. I mean, I was at Publisher Perspectives a couple of weeks back. I was sort of helping Steve and Robin out, and that was one of the discussion points, right? But it was like, well, they're kind of already doing that, aren't they? And the whole curation thing flared up in one of the panels, which was quite fascinating, right? And there was a Fern from Multilocal who's ex-agency, and gets the whole stack, right? Who was going, speaking sense. There was a guy at the other end, I forget his name, but he was like talking utter nonsense about agencies dying and all that. And there was a guy in the middle from the publishers going, well, I'm not kind of sure. Do I like you or do I like you? And, but you were kind of going like, let's just get over yourselves, right? It's like, it's a bit of both. Because, you know, if you're a good publisher, you're going to have the premium content. You're also going to have the audience, right? So, you know, if say, for example, it's Formula One, you've got stuff that people want. So
do you think the upfronts will be about the 30%?
Yeah. And I would say, look at Amazon. That's a really good example, right? I mean, I'm biased because I like Amazon. I work on it. But I absolutely admire their strategy, right? Because what they're doing is they're going big and bold after the 70%, doing all those deals, those things, right? Which I think will be transformative. But if you work with, you know, people like, you know, Holly and Jim at Amazon Ads, they're brilliant creative thinkers, right? And they really understand the value of it, right? I mean, I work with the Amazon Ad guys to develop new constructs and products, right? And it goes back to that media is anything and everything. So doing some work this year on lockers with them. It's like, you know, everything's possible. And that's the creative side. Now you can take that and go, this is really high value. And I think that's just, you know, the one thing we have to get better at is going, that's the price. We're not dropping the price on that 30%. Because if you look back to the history of programmatic, right, in the early days, when I was wandering around going, this wonderful thing, Cadrian, right, we were saying, we were trying to do that. We're going, this is really high value. Of course, we then commoditized it to make a little bit of money. So I think it's going to require people to go, thinking power, that's the price. We don't drop the price on thinking power. Because if we do, then yeah, we are slightly screwed. Yeah. Because you're monetizing less people for less, right? But I hope we don't, is my honest thought.
Indeed. Listen, that's been absolutely fascinating. I feel there's another 2 or 3 podcasts worth of content there we could chat about. So maybe you can come back at a future date.
Yeah, I can send our agents together as well.
Oh, yeah. I'll get my agents to talk to your agent, and I'm sure they'll produce something.
Not that kind of agent.
No. James, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Cheers.